Why did you want to be a writer? What was the side?
Well, you know, I don't know if any of you share in this, but when I was at about 17 or 18, you know, approaching my A-levels, and the terrible prospect of an adult life was looming, and I thought, what can I do? And I came from in fact, my father was a doctor, my mother was a teacher, and all my family's Scottish middle class were professional, you know, engineers and accountants and dentists, and I just knew I couldn't have a proper job. I think that was like I cannot do anything like this, and I was good at art. I was good at painting. I wanted to, I'll be a painter, and I investigated going to art school. So I think I sort of knew I wanted to be an artist of some kind, but I didn't know any novelists. I didn't know how you became a novelist. So I sort of went down the painter route. Then my father said, if you think you're going to art school, you know, dream on. And then, being, you know, craven, and I just switched to literature, because I was going to university to do a degree in English literature. And so I thought, well, if I won't be a painter, then I'll be a novelist. But I didn't. What did that mean? You know, I mean, nowadays you can get an idea of that, but you know, I think I'd seen somebody in a film, you know, typing away, and then...
So really, you don't think it's a vocation, you don't think it's a calling?
Well, I think there was an artistic calling. I just knew I wanted to be an artist, and you know, now I quote Chekhov, who said, all I want to be is a free artist, and I think there's something about that freedom from the 9 to 5, or the proper job, that... And it maybe was instinctive, you know, because as I said, I didn't come from a family where that was an option.
You had a happy childhood, didn't you?
Yes, perfect, yes.
But normally, you know,
relatively,
great novelists tend to have unhappy childhood. Graham Greene, you know. So
yeah, I mean, I think that there isn't any recipe, you know, there isn't that little chap's going to be a novelist one day. Right. But I think that, looking back and being honest, I think I wanted to, you know, to be an artist of some kind. And you know, I think, as Vladimir Nabokov would say, you're writing a novel, you're creating a work of art, as much as a sculptor or a composer or a painter creates a work of art. And it just happened that I ended up, and you know, I was good at English and I could write, you know, well. And when I went to university, I started doing a lot of journalism, student journalism. I was the theatre critic and the film critic of the university newspaper. So I was writing all the time. I started keeping a journal then, interesting enough, at the age of 19, fascinating document. So I was writing, but again, it was very hard to know how you took that next step, which I think is not an issue so much today. And so I had to find out, and I wrote one novel while I was at university, the autobiographical novel. Then I went to Oxford, and that's when I met my first writers, where I met other people. For example, Alan Hollinghurst and Andrew Motion, who were contemporaries of mine, and quite a lot of poets, actually, more poets than novelists, who wanted to be writers. And so I started to learn what you had to do. And so I always did a lot of literary journalism along the way as well. And I started reviewing quite early on, long before, you know, simultaneously to my first short stories being published, I was reviewing the Times Literary Supplement and little literary magazines, so I had a kind of literary critical career. So I was beginning to learn how to do it, and talking to people, and I met my first real writers then. I met Brian Aldiss, the science fiction writer, who's still with us, Brian.
Still writing.
Iris Murdoch. You know, Oxford was a good place to be, because the other writers who were there, apart from Hollinghurst and A.N. Wilson, another contemporary of mine at university, and poets like James Fenton and Craig Raine, and a whole generation had just left Oxford. People like Martin Amis had just left, so it was a good, you know, nurturing place to be. But it was getting, for me, it was getting, my first short story was published in this little magazine, London Magazine, which still exists, but under a new editor. But at the time, London Magazine had a very good reputation, edited by this man, Alan Ross, who was a poet and World War II veteran, and part of that Fitzrovia set, just during the war and after the war. Wonderful man, Alan. He took my very first short story and published it. Then he gave me books to review. So I, bit by bit, I was thinking, yes, this is the life for me.
It's not like you stumbled into being a writer, but it wasn't perhaps this calling, the romantic notion of it.
No, and I'm very suspicious of that, actually.
Right,
and I'm very suspicious of, my thesis at Oxford was on Shelley, the ultimate romantic figure, and I taught, Keats, Shelley, Wordsworth, Coleridge, and that romantic vision of the artist is a highly suspect one, I think. There's a lot of hard graft involved and stamina.